Now, as Minister Gan earlier mentioned, imported cases are a concern on many Singaporeans' minds. So I'd like to ask, why are returning Malaysian workers only given 7 days of stay-home notice, while we are not swabbing travellers upon their arrival into Singapore? It seems like these two policies are a little inconsistent with one another, given our understanding about the incubation period of the virus. Thank you.
Thank you. We adopt a risk management approach, taking into account the assessment of risk profile of the source where travelers coming from, in this case, particularly Malaysia. We also take into account the mitigating measures that the other country, in this case Malaysia, has put in place. So we take a holistic assessment of the risk of travelers coming to Singapore, and on the basis of that risk, we will then determine what are the precautionary measures that we need to put in place. Specifically on the SHN period, I'll ask DMS to explain from a professional point of view.
Yes, as far as the stay-home notice is concerned, we have taken efforts originally to isolate people who come from other countries into Singapore for fixed duration of 14 days originally, on the basis that this was the incubation period, the maximum incubation period that a case of COVID-19 infection could have. And then on the balance, on that abundance of caution, that was the period that we had defined. We then adjusted our regime to include testing because of a concern that there would be asymptomatic but infected travelers coming into Singapore. And this would allow us not to miss those individuals who are asymptomatic but still remain both infected and infectious despite finishing up their SHN period. We have since done several reviews. We've noted, for example, that when it came to countries with visitors coming to Singapore, the majority of visitors who were symptomatic would in fact have their symptoms within 5 to 6 days of their entry into Singapore, while those who are asymptomatic obviously would continue to need to be tested in this period of time. And that allowed us then to think about considering a shortening of the duration of SHN for countries where the original prevalence in that country was low. Therefore, on the balance of risk that we assess, the risk then of missing a traveler coming in, despite a shortened SHN, then manifesting with symptoms becomes even quite low in that setting of these countries where the prevalence is in fact lower than in Singapore. So we think on the balance of risk, we think we may be able to offer a shortened period of isolation, notwithstanding the fact that we'll continue to test travelers who come out from their isolation period of SHN, and the 7 days for these selected travelers would not be unreasonable. However, in countries where the prevalence rate of COVID-19 remains high, we think on the balance of that risk, we will still keep to 14 days for that category of travelers from those countries. So it's on the balance of the risk assessment, the number of anticipated cases coming in, that we then decided for selected countries, we could then lower that SHN requirement to 7 days.